We have a guest today. We have a guest.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have a really good turnout here, and we have some people online as well. Hopefully, they can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I think the microphone is through the this computer here, but thank you. So that's why I have to stand over here. But thank you for attending. Vic, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So thank you for attending. This is a great turnout. We have some just a few copies of agendas that you can have. But do we have any guests today? Jeff, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Jeff Schultz. I've been a pilot for 3 years.
We always plan somebody to fly by when somebody's introduced themselves.
Just interested in the warbirds. I just sold my BJT, so I wanted to get back to this.
Excellent. And you flew here in a Tiger, right?
I flew here in my dad's Tiger.
Very nice.
He said he's trying to figure out whether to get a Cessna 195 or a Columbia. 195. So how do you compare those two?
Yeah. Well, welcome. You're around a really good group of people that come to our meeting, so thank you. And new member, Dan.
Hi, my name is Dan Hunsick. I'm an airport inspector. My dad, back in the World War II, flew the 1860, the same version of the SNJ firefighter of the Army version of it. So that's what really got me interested. Actually, I think it was like 2 years ago at EAA, I came across you guys together, and it's interesting. And then all of a sudden, I was going through my dad's stuff for a website. They wanted a copy of his yearbook from Gardner Field, so I taking a copy of that, and I came across the website again.
Welcome. Any other guests?
I guess I'm sign up today. I'm a member of CAF National, but I just not have an official job. Scott, I went to the meeting in February.
Sure. Yeah. Excellent. Nice to see you, Scott. All right. Well, thank you for attending. Just a couple orders of business I want to cover, and then we can go straight into the presentation. I want to give you kind of an update on the wing aircraft. I can speak to the PT. We're close to having this back. We just have the propeller overhauled. It's sitting over at Paul's hangar. It's a work of art. They really did a nice job. It's beautiful right now. And we're waiting on, I think, the magnetos, and I think that should be it. So magnetos are being overhauled right now, and so when those get back, it should be ready to go. So hopefully within a matter of weeks. The last flight we had was on my flight on June 29th. So hopefully we can beat that, but probably it might be a little bit longer than that. But we're anxious to get this back and flying and get all the pilots current again. Gary, maybe you could speak to the SNJ. It's flying and looking beautiful with paint job.
Yeah, we're in great shape. It's flying. There's really no squawks on it right now to speak of. We're going to put the new intercom in that Aaron Marshall donated to us as soon as the wiring harness is made up by the radio shop down at Rockford. And but the existing one works fine, so we're okay with that. And yeah, so it's in great shape. Been flying a lot. Steve Sorge has been flying it quite a bit, and I had it up Friday, did 5 flights on Friday with it, and a lot of flights the week before. So it's been up in the sky quite a bit. So making noise and pleasing a lot of people. So, and then on you want me to comment on the 234
sure,
too?
Yeah.
because I've got a slide. Well, I got a slide here of it, but good news is all of our ailerons, flaps, elevators, $7,500 pair of elevators that were all made out of aluminum, wingtips donated by Carl Schwerman. All of that, it was all painted up at Meyer Aviation and balanced and driven down to Ada, Oklahoma and delivered Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and unloaded. And it's all done and it's down there. So we're in the final stretches. They have everything from us that they're going to get from us. And so it's up to them to finish it. And they keep on saying that we're almost to 3 or 4 weeks, you know, whatever that means, you know. He doesn't, Tim Roll does not commit to anything because it's been a year and a half that's been there. So, but we are down, he says 2 of the 3 mods are done, you know, the AD mods that have to be done on it because it sat through all those ADs that came out on the T-34s. 2 of the 3 are done. Actually, the 3rd one is the longest one. It's putting a strap or a, you know, a doubler on part of the spar. But that's all in the final stages now. And as they're doing all this, they're doing the annual, bringing it up to speed. We're going to have it all ready to sign off and go. And we're literally weeks away. And it's all looking pretty exciting. So that's the update. Any questions from anyone on that T-34? I know a lot of people are asking about different things, but yes, it's in the shop and they are working on it. But we're still there's that Dallas T-34 is still there. That was there before ours, you know. And but that's very close too. So I think they're working both at the same time. We have pictures of it in the shop being worked on, and they, like I said, they've done 2 of the 3 mods already, and they're working away on the annual. So.
All right, very good. Any questions? So before we get into the program, I just wanted to mention on our official calendar, I'm not sure if it's been changed yet, but because of Oshkosh, we moved our July 18th meeting to July 11th. But because there's no Oshkosh this year, we moved it back to July 18th. So July 18th will be our next wing meeting. And not quite sure if we're going to have it here or in the terminal yet. We're to be decided. We'll find out with emails from officers. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to, I guess, Paul. Paul, you're going to cover the history on the SNJ, and then Gary's going to take us through other parts.
Did you cover the ride stays?
Oh yeah, thank you. So we're having a rides day on July 19th. That's going to be our first rides event of the year. I think we're planning one in August as well. So so keep that in mind. Come out when we have them. It's already been advertised on Facebook, and it's on our web page. But feel free to come out and enjoy the rides. August 22nd. All right. We planned that. Okay. Thanks, Gary. Paul?
Yeah. So my first duty, everyone signed the sign-in sheet. So I'm just going to pass this around. Please make sure you sign in.
You're going to be close enough to the mic so the Zoom attendees can see that? Okay.
Yep.
And
so I'm just going to walk through a little bit of history on the AT-6, which most of you probably know far better than I do. But so anybody know a couple of nicknames for the T-6? The Pilot Maker, right? That's a real common. What about the other one? What about the more famous nickname for the T-6? The Texan. It's called the Texan because it was made in Texas. Exactly. One of the most famous military trainers in history, certainly in American history. The T-6 was designed in the late 30s. Yep. If you want to, it was designed in the late 30s by North American Aviation and presented to the U.S. government as a primary combat trainer beginning in the early part of the war. Very effective, a very reliable platform, very excellent training aircraft for combat. And due to its success, they made over 17,000 of them and used by both the Army Air Corps and the Navy as the SNJ. Only about 1,500 were converted to SNJs, so it is more of a more rare type than what was used for the Army Air Corps. But the main difference with the SNJ is the rear gunner platform in the back. It was also sent to the RCAF. About 2,800 were sent up to Canada for that, and given the name Harvard, using the convention that the Canadians were using for after Ivy League schools for all their aircraft. $29,000 was the build cost, and built in Grand Prairie, Texas, which is at that time was a small rural outpost of Dallas, and was really built up for North America. I was really built for North America. And, their factory there kind of helped define and grow Grand Prairie in around 1940. It had the 600 horsepower 9-cylinder Pratt & Whitney. And then it was so successful, they continued to make multiple variants. It was used in many Air Force implementations around the world, continued well into the 50s, and even saw combat in a couple of, in the South African and in Greece, actually saw frontline combat prominently as ground support, close air support, and reconnaissance. It was used by the US Army, actually the Air Force at that point, in Vietnam as a forward air control platform. So we have some of the detailed history here. I won't go through all of this. I think I touched on it. The Pratt & Whitney 1340 and removable fuel tanks came in later, converted to the Harvard, and then changed the electrical system, or photographic modifications, combat modifications. Anything you would want to add to this? This continued to modify and change the platform as was needed by the military.
So the Harvard in Canada, some of them made in the US sent there, and there's some made through the license that you can't.
The initial lend lease. The aircraft, matter of fact, the North American, the first deep seal was to Fritz. Fritz didn't have any manufacturing capability enough because they were picking up long fighters. So they bought the T6. And the initial cadre, while we were still neutral, were phoned up to North Dakota, Montana, pushed over the border by Canadians. But they were all pretty much 86 Okay. Were they illegal? Pardon? Were they illegal? They would have been. And also, I don't know, the SNJ was delivered smaller than the
As you would expect.
just a little known fact.
Yeah, so it was called the Pilot Maker as a basic combat trainer. Initially, your combat training was 200 required hours, and 75 of those were required in the AT-6. Towards the end of the war, they started using this also as a primary trainer and putting pilots in this from beginning to end. And they figured out that it took them longer to get through the program, but the pilots were coming out better at the other end. As I mentioned, foreign service as close air support, and then FAC service in Korea and Vietnam. And this was actually that picture. I wanted to mention this picture. This is a gunnery practice within SNJ and the gunnery platform. Actually, I'm sorry, the photo platform in the back.
Yeah, we got some other gunnery pictures.
There we do. So our particular history of 95 Golf, manufactured in 43, delivered in July 43. I've got much of this. I've got the original cards, service record cards, showing that it was shipped to Kingsville, Texas, very close to the North American factory. Spent a short time there before it was transferred to really a handling division called FASRON 104, where it was moved to Port Laudy, Morocco. And then spent quite a bit of time, a year and a half or so, in Morocco. In most of 44, it was on the ground, but then in 45, it saw quite a bit of flying time in Morocco. And from what I can understand, most of that would have been doing reconnaissance around the Mediterranean.
person. It's actually a comment. My grandfather is in North Africa, in World War II. I have all his markers. And when he first went over, he had a phone. So he flew, it wasn't a T6, but it was something else to get current.
Interesting.
So a lot of, from what I could read them, a lot of the T6s were used both for currency, for a little bit of pilot training there, and then also doing recon for sub hunting, or looking for downed aircraft at the time. So your grandfather would have been one of those guys that was flying. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a little history on the right there, but.
Yeah, you added this. What do you want to say on this?
Oh, well, we do have an interesting fact that in 1997, there was a collision between our airplane and a North American Harvard in a formation flight landing at Midland Airport, Texas. Both aircraft were CAF airplanes. And the result of that, though, is that we have a Harvard wing on our right wing. So we are a hybrid Harvard, just for Vic's sake, So, and so there's a little bit of history there, and that we just added here that we're assigned to the wing in 2011, and the arrival date was October 23rd, 2011. So it's interesting. And then that FASRON 104 emblem there, the patch, that was going to need, there's some history to it there. If we ever wanted to use a patch for the plane or something, that might be an interesting one to use. No. Do you know? We'll have to do some research.
Bob, I thought you knew what FASRON was short for. It's my understanding that FASRON was really a transportation squadron, right? So they were responsible for the aircraft, for getting it onto the ship, transporting it to Morocco, moving it. And as long as it was within the logistics arm of the Navy, it was assigned under FASRON. But then once it was under active service, then it was into a regular Navy squadron. We can see that if you go to the next page. So this is the data card. You can see initially in 43, it was assigned to Kingsville, and then it was in some squadrons in a short time there, and then moved to the pool in Pensacola. And then on the next page, these are the other data cards where it was its service and then finally stricken in 46, reinstated for the Coast Guard out in California, and then sold in 48 in San Diego. So that's the high level movement of the assignments. So here we can see where it was moving in more detail. So this is the actual hourly tracking. On the right hand side, well, you have the tail number, but then to the left of that, you have the hours being tracked. So you can see in Pensacola, it was being flown out of the pool for training, moved to Norfolk, and that's where it was assigned to FASRON 3. And then finally there you see FASRON 104 in about the middle of the card. And that's when it was then moved to Port Laudy in Morocco. Served quite a bit of time there. So you see the first couple entries in Morocco, didn't see any flying, but then in 45, it started to accumulate a lot of time. So that's where we think it was, doing currency or doing reconnaissance. But in 45, it did see a lot of work there. And the term for it was that it was an advanced base. So Morocco certainly would have been a forward base in active theater at that time. Served in Port Laudy well into 1945, and then came back to Pensacola. Corey Field is also a training base at that time, and then moved to Whiting Field, and then finally went into storage and spent some time in storage before it was, the last assignment is Litchfield Park, where it was then stricken from inventory and then later sold. This is the Morocco Air Base. On the left is during the battle. The Port Laudy base was a very strategic air base at that point, just before the invasion of southern France by the Allies. We took hold of the base, and so here you can see a destroyer patrolling onto the Port Laudy Air Base. On the right, you can see the base after some construction by the Allies of the two strips. It was very strategic because of the inlet, a deep water inlet could then service ships and also service the air base. And then from there, we could do sub control and other launch attacks. So that's why it was a great place for it. And as I mentioned, it was then sold to Allied Metal Industries was the first buyer. However, they did not hold it for very long. This bill of sales from 1959, it seems that they just bought it and really as a holding company, and then they sold it very quickly after that. What is great about our aircraft is that it did not change hands very often. It only had a few people that then took good care of it before the CAF bought it on the right. So here we have kind of the history. The blue at the bottom are the transactions. So you can see it was sold, changed hands a couple of times until about 1962, and then had a single owner, and then finally sold to the CAF in 82. And then had, you know, the rudder was recovered and solid transceiver, and then finally when the CAF got it, recovered it and to taken good care of it over since. As Gary mentioned, it wasn't an accident in Texas, and the right wing was replaced. And then recently, we've done a lot of work with the engine overhaul, the ADSB, and then Steve Storage has done an incredible amount of aesthetic improvements on it.
Yeah, it looks like a brand new plane. The red just it's new. It's just beautiful. So Aaron Marshall, you know, with the painting, and Steve Storage did a lot of the work too, and it's just tremendous amount of effort went into that restoring it. The yellow was pretty sharp to start with, and the gray on the sides is once you polish it up and get all the dinge off of it from the exhaust, it's pretty good to shape too. So the red faded so bad it looked like it was almost half gone. You know, so. But it really beautiful restoration. So that's our latest restoration. So
that's a quick tour of the history. I don't know if there are any questions. Otherwise, we'll move right into.
Yeah, there's some references here where a lot of this information is available from. We have a couple books up here, somewhere here, of the if anybody wants to take one along and bring it back, check it out, and just there's some really good books on the T6 and the history. A lot of interesting history. They were used for so many different things. And if you go through one of those, all the different markings, I think 37 different countries use the T6 and variants of it for not only training, but for very defensive and offensive, you know, combat. So it's a lot of good information in there about what happened there. So the next thing I want to talk about though is this SNJ. We heard, you know, came here in 2011. And what I wanted to highlight was the mission of the SNJ here at the wing. And here, there's a picture of the hangar here when we first brought it home. And this thing's going on too fast, so automatic change here. But so it's been here since 2011. And so what I wanted to do is kind of highlight, you know, our mission to educate, honor, and inspire. That's one of the more recent, you know, mission statements. But you know, the CAF was founded to acquire, restore, and preserve these airplanes. And they created the Ghost Squadron to recreate and remind and reinforce the lessons learned from military aviation history. And we do that through flight, exhibition, and remembrance. So there's our mission statement. And then our own mission statement here at the Wisconsin wing is kind of grows on that, you know, that we're a civilian group with a passion for military history and dedicated to keeping these planes flying. So that's our wing mission statement. So how do we do that? How do we carry out that mission here at the Wisconsin wing? We've only recently started rides. Rides is one of the mission types thing that, you know, that you can do with the airplane. But you know, we've done Wings Over Waukesha events. So we've highlighted different things with Wings Over Waukesha in the past. And then we got into our own events of Gathering of Warbirds, 2016, 2017, 18. And so we've got a lot of history there. We also have our PX operations. The T6 or SNJ has gone out to many, many events just to park next to our PX and be able to support that mission and get people, you know, educated about what the airplane is and see up close what World War II aviation you know, equipment looked like. The honor flights that we've done, many honor flight escorts. Most people are familiar with that, but the honor flight escort program that we have started out, I think, well, it started out before we even had the T6 here. And what we do is, we park our planes next to the planes that are leaving for Washington. And we fire up when they're backing out of the gate, and we taxi out ahead of the plane, and we're ahead. We get this beautiful view of when they go through their water cannon salute for the veterans on board the plane. We got a beautiful, unbelievable view of what that looks like from right out there on the taxiway ahead of them. And then they follow us out to the runway, and they park in the position on the side, and we go take the runway, and left and right. We take off, do a teardrop, and come back on a low pass. And at that time, the plane is cleared into position and hold or line up and wait or whatever. And the first pilots were kind of leery of this because, here they are, they're sitting on the runway, and they're looking up, and they see two looking like fighter planes coming down, down the pike at them. But most of them got used to the idea that we weren't going to be doing anything bad, and we were off to the sides. But we maintain, the minimum flyby altitude for the CAF, and do a nice pass. Usually the PT on one side and the SNJ on the other. So we've done a lot of honor flights, and then we usually have a rider in the back seat. Sometimes it's honor flight, crew committee. Was the Stars and Stripes here, isn't it? Is it Stars and Stripes here, honor flight that runs out of Milwaukee? Anyway, we usually have one of their people on board to fly with us. So we've done a lot of honor flight escorts and rides for their people. We've done a number of salutes. We do flybys. It's a real common thing. Vic heads up our flyby group there, and has done some just unbelievable efforts to pull planes together and do missing man and all different things. Steve, that's what you want to talk about there. We've got a picture here of your hangar with your.
This was the Anzac Day, which is the Australian New Zealand Army Corps. Hosted the Australian New Zealand Club of Southeast Wisconsin, the concert general from Chicago, mixed dance, good bagpipes, big organized the missing man. It's a solemn occasion. It commemorates Gallipoli. They were defeated, but it's a little bit like our Alamo. They were defeated in London. A little bit like the Australians and New Zealand is a combination of Memorial Day. So we did that very well.
So we're, all these different things we participate in. Then we have educational events here. We got a bunch of kids here with our plane in the hangar here. And I don't know, does anybody want to comment on this event here? I wasn't sure.
And they were working with some, I think before Bill Smith. Brownies?
Yeah, Brownies, yeah.
I think they were Brownies. And they were showing them, they did a tabletop exercise with the girls doing air traffic and ground control. So they were moving model airplanes on the tabletop from taxiways and runways.
Yeah, and some of you might remember George Michael. He was our presenter at our banquet, ended up joining our group here. He passed away a couple of years ago now, but he did a fantastic presentation on all his training for being a B-24 bomber radio operator, top turret gunner. We had a fantastic presentation from him, and he was just so thrilled to be able to give it to such a large group. But one of his T6 experiences I wanted to share with it was that when he went to gunnery school, first he had to do is shoot trap and skeet from a moving truck, and then he had to learn to strip and assemble a 50 caliber blindfolded with gloves on, and then he learned to shoot from a moving plane to a moving target. That was the first plane ride of his life, as the backseat of a T6 in the gunnery position, and his instructor was kind of a roughshod guy and didn't really tell him what the ins and outs were of putting his harness on really tight in the back seat. And so what he did was he took him up for this gunnery training. You can see the gunnery position in the back. That's our gun that's over there. It's our 30 caliber A&M2 replica that we use in the back seat for shows. But what happened was on his first ride out there, the instructor rolled the plane upside down, and he was hanging loose in his straps. Just he was like his straps were really loose, but he said the pilot rolled it over and brought it. He sat back down in the seat. From then on, he really tightened the straps down. So I mean, to have him tell us that story. I mean, it was. He said he thought he was going to fall out of the airplane, but we've taken the plane to so many different events. Here's a World War II vet coming up and just kind of looking in there and just kind of used to fly the SNJ or the AT6 and it was this was down at I think this might have been Rockford. Anyway, just the experiences that we've had taking this plane to so many different venues and events has just been fantastic. Just sharing a few pictures here at different CAF events where we've had our planes and different things. There's Tom having a great time with Mary Kay. Breakfast, fly-ins, breakfast, and a lot of our members and experience that we have there. So in preparing for this, the way I utilize this airplane for sharing our mission is that I give rides to people in this airplane. And I sat down with my logbook since we got this thing, and I totaled up 303 flights that I've given riders, 164 riders, so there's many repeats. 9 of them are 5 or more flights. But if you look through here, there's some, there's a lot of members that are in here. There's a lot of, friends and relatives and other people too. But there's a whole lot of people that have, shown interest, and sometimes this was their key to becoming members. I've highlighted, I don't know why this thing keeps on changing here. I'm going to see if the timer is going. But there's a few, I know Kai Anderson was the son of a Tuskegee crew member. And Tom, do you want to make a comment about that? Because that was, talking about how our airplane touches people's lives. That's a story that, just briefly, without getting into too much detail, but he was quite a man. He still is.
We made a mistake by taking that aircraft, or any of our aircraft, and one of my friends, Kai Anderson from Beloit, he is an excellent guitar player, and his father was a ground crew ski, Jack from America. And 7 years ago, Gary made arrangements so that we could bring Kai here. It was a way of him to connect with his father who had been gone. It was something that and I'm sorry, there aren't words to describe the emotional power that had with this stuff. He added to the ride, which was rather physically challenging for him. He developed a long disorder. He had over his lung. He had a phrase. This guy had all these years later was still very because it was a connection that he had made with his father and his father's service. And that's just one story that this airplane is.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a few other examples here, but there's a few in there. A lot of cadet flights in here. We've had a lot of young people get rides in here. I've highlighted a few here that I've pulled up some pictures from there. I don't have any pictures from the I do have some Austin pictures. We've got a close ties with our EAA chapter friends at Austin. We've been going there year after year with the plane for their flying, and we've developed some close ties there. And so the plane has been a very good ambassador for doing our mission of inspiring and honoring and educating. So, I just wanted to highlight a few things here. We took Betty Moncrief for a flight we flew down to Janesville, and 94, wasn't she? 94th birthday. And she living in a senior living facility, sharp as a tack. And with the vocabulary of a sailor, she just swore all the time. her daughter and her granddaughters were saying, "Mom, Grandma, stop talking like that," you know. But she wanted to go for an airplane ride, and they were going to take her for a ride in a little RV or something like that.
And during her service, every time she would get promoted, she would get in trouble and get knocked right back down.
Yeah, she was very proud that she earned her 2 stripes 3 times. And then someone said, "Well, how do you earn them 3 times? Once you get them, you get them." "Oh no, if you can get demoted." And so she got earned them, demoted, and she was real proud of that. And to get demoted, it was like dating the officers or doing something, AWOL or whatever. So anyway, she came out there. We got her in that plane, and she never stopped talking the whole flight. She was telling me about flying this plane and that plane. She was a whack though. And I talked to the WASP organizers, and they said that in the early days, they didn't call them WASPs, and they were a lot of them weren't full pilots. They assisted with it. She said she actually did work on ships for a while. She did all sorts of things. She was quite the interesting lady, but she had a lot of experience that she wanted to share with people. And so anyway, there's a shot there. And when she was over there, she reached over and grabbed Tom and gave him a pinch. And she was a real live wire. She was so much fun. So, I mean,
You didn't have to tell everything.
well, I was there too, So, but anyway, we're trying to. She's stepping into the cockpit, and she was almost in, and she says, "Give me a push, give me a push," and she told us where to push her, So she was so much fun. I wish we could have had her come as a speaker or something, but her mouth was very sailor-like, and if we had any kids around, it would have been bad. So another interesting event that we had with both our airplanes, I believe it was 2012 or 13. We had the planes over at Mitchell the night before for an honor flight. And we were going to get there nice and early in the morning because the sun didn't come up till we had to be there, right at sunrise to be able to be there and do our escort. And we got over there in the darkness to bring the planes out, and they were covered with frost. I mean, you could draw your fingers in this frosty snow on the top of every surface. Was not just wet, it was just slushy. And we were trying to wipe it down and everything, and it was just frozen, So we said, okay, let's just taxi over and forget about the flying because we're never going to get all this stuff off of there. And all this talking, the Delta guys on the ramp there, with their flights, heard all this on ground control or whatever. And this Delta guy says, "Let me pull over here on B12 or whatever it was, and have your guys pull up behind me. We'll give them a little dryer job there." So we pulled up behind them there, and we sat there, and it was like a summer, hot summer breeze just. We're just breathing in that. It was just sweet smelling air, and all that just melted right off of there. It was just like we were in the tropics. And so we pulled ahead, and then after we were done with that, we pulled by, and you can see that the little pilot window up there is open, and the pilot's waving at us. And there were a lot of people. He told all the people on board that that we were coming by, and so we were able to do our mission. We flew and did everything. All because of and we tracked down the captain. It was hard to, it's hard to find out who's the captain of an airplane. We had to go to the crew chief and find out what flight it was and everything. And we sent him a nice thank you note and a patch and stuff like that for the plane. And so we appreciated it because he saved our mission. And subsequent to that, when we had to go over early, one time we had Midwest Express let us use their hangar over there. And we parked our 2 little airplanes in this huge hangar. I mean, it made us, someone went up in this high-rise thing, like to change the light bulbs in this huge hangar, and he took a picture of this huge hangar with our 2 little, it looks like a little model airplane sitting on the floor there. Big, huge door. I mean, you could pull airliners in there, and it was a neat thing. So we've had a lot of fun experiences at doing our honor flights, and here's the shot right out the side of our SNJ with that plane getting their water cannon salute. So it's a real pleasure to do that. Another real special ride that we did, we touched someone's life, was Paul Bennett. Paul's not with us anymore, but Paul had some health issues. He was Santa Claus for 50-something years and a big man. And his doctor said, unless he loses some weight, he's going to die. And he was having congestive heart failure, all sorts of things, troubles. And so he said, he went on this 1,500 calorie, 1,000 calorie a day diet with our breakfast group, and he was so good about it. His motivation was he wanted to get down to 250 pounds so he could get in the back seat of the T6 and go for a ride. And when he finally made it down to the weight where he could get into that thing, he was the most pleased guy you wouldn't believe. And we took him up. I took him up. It was a GOW day, and I took him up. GOW or Wings Over Walk Show, one of the days. But I took him up in the morning before the show started, and we actually flew over an event. His son was doing a tractor pull out somewhere, a little place, and we flew overhead and talked to him on the radio. He talked about that until his last day. He said he called me the best pilot in the world. We had, I mean, when you can touch people's lives with that airplane, it tells us why we spend all the time and all the effort, all the money to keep these planes flying, to do things like that. And that's really special. And here we are taking off. Another thing that we did was we did a flyover in December, I think it was the 27th, between Christmas and New Year's. And the James Sullivan, he was a SPD dive bomber pilot in the Battle of Midway. And he came back to Milwaukee and was vice president of, worked up to being vice president of Briggs and Stratton, and retired in Wisconsin. But he died, and his wife called up EAA and said, can we do a flyby? And I think it was like during the sequester or whatever, they couldn't get any military flights. And the EAA says, well, we don't really fly, whatever, call the CAF. So they called the CAF, and we rounded up a whole crew of airplanes. And you can see in the picture there's a lot of snow in the background there, and there's ice on the lake down there. But we fired up our airplanes, and we gave him a great salute. And his family was really touched by that. It just, just sometimes it just puts a lump in my throat sometimes what we've been able to do with our airplanes, to do these kind of things. And I got to touch on Mauston. Going to Mauston, the first time we flew to Mauston, we landed and taxied in, Tom always described it. It was like Lindbergh landing in Paris. All these people all run. They never had a warbird come to their flying before, and they just all came running out to the plane. And so we've been going back it's a Saturday of Labor Day weekend every year. And rain or shine, we try to get there, and as soon as the weather clears. But anyway, we usually set up a little mini PX, and Tom Chudy there in the center in the right picture there. Tom is our real good friend there, many good friends there, but he's a special guy. He went through a lot of health issues. He's back flying his Comanche, and he's been here. He's flown here many times to be at our meetings. So we do a lot of things with our plane, and other people here I have stories too of people who've taken flying and touched their lives. But that's what it's all about. And so if you're wondering, why we do this, if you're, new here, some of the new guys here, it's not just, it's not a flying club to go out and fly and have fun, pretending we're, World War II pilots. We really, these machines are time machines. They take us and our passengers to a whole new, degree of education and inspiration, and so many times honoring very special people. Yep. Yeah, I was just going to go through just a few of the technical things just to get some of the dimensions down. We won't go into a lot of the stuff, and then we can do a walk around on the plane there and get a little more outside there. But just here's some of the dimensions here. The critical dimensions. Top of the prop with the tail wheel and the tug is 11 foot 1 inches. So if you're tugging that thing around, you better make sure they have a big hangar door. And that's 42 feet wide. That's a lot. That's wider than a lot of the small hangars. So you can't pull it in just any hangar. Weight and balance. It is kind of critical weight and balance for rear CG. You got to be careful with the T6 series. And we've discovered that you really can't put 110.5 gallons of fuel into that thing unless you lift the tail and do all sorts of things to get it all in there. You really get more like, 92 or so in there. And we've got our handy dandy weight and balance sheet that you just fill in the weights of the pilot and the passenger and how much fuel you have and the baggage, and bingo, it tells you real quick if you're safe or not. So we got a lot of good things to help us with. But some interesting airspeeds. Top never exceed speed is 226. And your just all the different things here. Your 90. Let's see, what is that? 90. Best rate is it best rate is 90. Best angle is we're two around. Best angle is 110, and your stall speeds clean are 72, and with flaps 64. And if all goes silent in front of you, you peg at 95 miles an hour and just start looking for a place to land. And G limits, got very high G limits, 5.67 for max positive, and with external load, it's reduced to 4.3 rolling G's, and max negative is 2.3. And I got a picture here. If you're walking around the airplane and doing a pre-flight on the airplane, if you're at an air show, you always got to look down in there. I don't know how many times kids or wise guys or whatever, they'll throw a can in there, they'll do stuff. You do find things at air shows, as much as it's a stupid thing, but you do find people doing weird things. It's a nice depository for hidden things. So we look down in there. But the engine is a huge 9-cylinder, 600 horsepower Pratt & Whitney 1340 supercharger with 10-to-1 ratio on it. Puts out a lot of power, a lot of noise, and when the T6 sound that you hear is not all the engine. The engine is a low rumble, but that snarl that you get to it is the prop tips going supersonic. That's the key to the sound. The combination of the low rumble out of that huge exhaust pipe and the high pitch scream of those prop tips going supersonic give it a very unique sound. And so I just had a lot of different systems pictures on here, but we're going to walk around the airplane and kind of take a look at all these things and give you a brief overview of the plane here. And I don't know if we want to let's see if we want to zip. When do we want to do the drawing for the free flight? Want to come back in? Oh, you do? Okay. And I don't know if you read that. Everybody that's in attendance has a chance of getting a free ride in the SNJ, maybe today if the weather holds off a little bit or another time. But that's part of my mission with the airplane, is to give rides to people. And if I fly alone, I feel guilty. I just always feel like I need to have someone back there sharing the experience. And so I thought that today we're talking about the SNJ. Let's talk about doing the, giving someone that experience. So,
So we'll take a.
Before we're going outside, I want just to make one last comment. When you see the photos that you saw, you see a lot of the smiles there. This is a really special aircraft, and we're blessed with it. If you want to be part of these trips or these missions, just step right up. Let him know. Let him know, because if you're a Wisconsin Wing member, this is your aircraft. And so you have a chance to travel with it, whether it's in the backseat or home, or whatever. You gotta go with what understand the community. And this belongs to us. Make sure that you say, I want to do this, I want to be part of this. Let Gary know, or Steve, whenever it's flying, we don't want to leave anybody out. That makes sense? I want everyone to have a chance to be part of this.
Great, thank you, Tom. Thanks, Tom.
thanks, Tom.
So we're going to take just a 1 or 2 minute intermission so that we can transfer out to the airplane. So the folks on the phone, we're just going to hold up on the presentation for a minute so we can get configured out there, and we'll be back in just a second.
Okay, so I should stop sharing then, right? Okay. Yeah, mute that. Bye-bye.
I guess I'm leaving. Bye.
It's not quite done yet there, Brad. It's and George. It's actually they're walking out to. We're going to do a walk around on the airplane now.
Hey Henning, if I talk, does it become full screen, or do I have to make it presentation somehow?
No, I think it's I think when you're talking, you become the object there.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Yeah, so they made them all the same.
Okay, it's all set.
Hey there, Bob. Good to see you.
He's chatting.
Good to see you guys.
Nope, you're still on mute there, Bob Coonsey. It's a
There we
little-
go, Henning. Now I got it. I couldn't figure out how to get the video on.
Now
Now we're good.
we're almost set to go there.
There we go. If you guys are doing this works out really good, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice tribute to be able to pop this together.
Oh, yeah, it is. It really is. There's Gary. You guys are doing a good job with the pictures, too.
I'm not going to pull out. I'm not in here. Take that.
Okay, we should probably go on mute and then they'll go live. with
Okay.
Okay, let's all walk over here.
Hold on, Henning.
Before you start anything on the airplane, you got to go up on top and make sure the mags are turned off. And then we pump down the flaps for inspection. And we should have brought a step out here. This is a big step up here. And I'm going to glasses real quick here. Because it's bright out here. Yeah, it's as bright as it gets. When we fly the SNJ, the first thing we got to do on the ground here is do the paperwork. We have our green book, and we always record all the flights. You have to record the mission, the purpose, and get a you have to get approval for the flight for the operations officer. And then we also go through a process of measuring our fuel quantity and verifying what the mission is, and that we have adequate fuel to do that mission. So, thank you for bringing the step. That's it makes it a lot easier for me to step in there. I can get up on that thing, but with my replacement knees, it's a little bit harder. But, the first thing we do is we make sure that the mags are off, the master's off, and the control lock is on. So we can actually take the control lock off so we can move the system controls. And I'm going to put the flaps down, and I'm going to pump them down. Flaps are down. And a little trick that they have with the with doing the pre-flight is that you can, if it's all bright sun and it's hard to see in the cockpit to see if the mags are off, you can do it right in this little hand holder. You can reach in here and just make sure the mags are turned off there. So once we verified that the mags are off, we get back down off the wing. We'll come back up here again after we do our walk around. And we get our fuel check valve here. We walk around. First thing we do is we go down here and we look underneath there and verify that the flap hinges and the flap engagement tubes are in place. There's some rubber tubes that are tie wrapped onto the joints on there that have to be in place in order for that to be to be safe. And you can see the flaps disengage from the bottom with the top surface hanger. It's a Fowler type flap, and so or split flap type thing. So that you don't see that the flaps are down from inside. You have to look at the indicator to see where your flaps are. You're not visible from the plane. But we do the inspection there. Next thing we do is we come out on the wing, check our ailerons, make sure we get full travel. We check the hardware, make sure all the cotter pins are in place. And if you do the government manual, it tells you to go out here and wiggle the wing, make sure it's in place. That's what it says to do, so we do it. And come down and make sure all the wing looks good. And we check the strut right here with 3 to 4 fingers is fine on there. Tire pressure, it looks really good. Down here, there's a little pin down here that engages your up gear lock. That needs to be rotating and turning. You little greasy finger doing that. But that's that all needs to be inspected. Make sure there's nothing leaking, no fluids leaking out. And you can check up here. You can see if you can put a camera on that. This is your gear lock. Your gear down lock indicator. When that line, can you see that line on there? When that line's lined up and there's a little like a door latch thing there, that's a locking pin that holds it there. You can see that as a pilot. You get a visual indication that your gear is down and locked. There's other indicators, there's lights, there's everything, but this is the ultimate indicator of the gear position. And then what we do is, I don't want to crawl under there and get all dirty right now, but there's 2 fuel drains down there that we drain, and we check the fuel, make sure that it's blue, light blue, and we have the proper fuel and no contaminants in there. So then if we come around to the engine here, And we're going to take a look at the engine. Look in here, make sure there's no soda pop cans thrown in there. And we look around, we're getting a little bit of a oil leak out of here, not too bad. We just had a new seal put on it, but we're getting a little bit of oil residue there. We're hoping that that stops soon with time. We inspect the propeller, looking for any nicks, any abrasions, anything that might cause a problem. So we look through there, we look at just give it a visual, make sure that we're not seeing any big oil leaks all around. And come around on this side. Oh, did we lose it?
You lost your mic.
Yep, okay, we lost it. We'll do it again. That switches the mic right here.
Yep.
Yep, I'll put it on here again. Okay, we're still on there. Okay, we have access to our battery. We can check the battery connection, and we have a battery charger that we connect here. But we look for anything that's unusual, any excessive oil leaks. This is all normal. The exhaust going down the side, that's all normal. Needs cleaning. We always look for volunteers that come out and clean the plane. On this side, with the same thing, we're looking for the 3 to 4 fingers. On the strut, we want to make sure that pin is turning and that the tires are in good shape. These tires are on the bald side, but they're perfectly legal and they're safe tires. We have a new set to go on there when these are actually showing cords, but you can tell we're flying the plane a lot. Check the gear doors and make sure that they're adequate, and then again you look at the gear lock position to make sure that is in a lock position. Here we have our machine gun. We actually have our 50 caliber replica in the wing. Oh, this is a 30 caliber replica in the wing. This was used for gunnery practice. The SNJs were commonly used. It had a gun here. It had a nose gun there that actually shot through that sight there and shot through with a synchronizer on the front. And then we had the flex gun. The flex gun is in the rear position, and it would the canopy opens forward, and that gun that's on display inside of there, the 30 caliber A&M2, is a rear mounted gun that goes in there. We use it for display purposes only, but it's a real education tool to show what it was used for. And then we go down the wing looking for any kind of abnormalities, checking the pitot tube. The pitot tube has its input here for airspeed, and on the back side here is the static ports. So you need to make sure the static is clear and everything is clean on it. And then we just continue around. We always get a few bugs that go for a ride. And check the aileron again, make sure we got good travel, checking all the pins. And locking the bolts and the ports on there. And then we got to check the flaps that are on this side. We're going to check, make sure all the hinge pieces are intact and everything's looking good. So these covers cover up the bolted connection between this wing bolts to the fuselage section here, and the fuel tank is right in here. This has to be, you have to make sure that this is safety wrapped and tight on here, but this comes off for inspection. There's an AD on the plane for inspecting the bolts and the holes and for cracks. We've had a history, very small history of cracks developing where the holes were drilled for the bolts, and it put a little stress riser if they were drilled too deep in with the countersink, and it created some cracking issues. So that's a repetitive AD inspection. And you can see we've named the plane, Navy for Milwaukee. There is a history that some Navy SNJs were based in Milwaukee, so we were able to do that. It was in Oakland before that. If you look at the right lighting, you'll see Oakland for a minute, where it was stationed out in California prior to our assignment with the CAF.
That's Hollywood for you.
So here you get a beautiful shot of the glistening red paint that the guys were able to put on the plane. Look at that. It just looks like brand new. And beautiful job on the red paint. In our ADSB, there's $3,500 right there. So that little thing gives our ADSB tracking. And this is our elevator trim. Gonna make sure that it's all intact and tight and not too much excessive play in there. Same thing with this one. You don't want any excessive play in your trim for your rudder. Then you come around and just you look over the fuselage again, make sure we're in good shape. Your antenna for your ELT is intact in place, and your comm antenna, nothing's damaged. And then we're back to our starting point. So what we do is, we enter all the logs in there, make sure that we're up to date. We check the oil. I won't go through all that detail, but we check the oil, record what the oil level is, and then we physically check the fuel quantity visually by looking in the tank, and we write down what we have. If it was just filled up and the tanks are full, you don't, you can see that they're full. That makes it a lot easier. But if they're not full, you can stick it and you can find out exactly what's in there. Make sure you have the fuel quantity that's needed for your flight. So, and then at this point, we put the fuel selector back, or the fuel tester back in its holder. Steve Sorge has done a great job putting some of our checklists on here. He's put this bag in here to put the logbook in, and we have cushions and things in here for our passengers. So what I'll do is we're about out of time. What time do we want to end?
We've got a couple more minutes.
Couple more minutes. Let's go take a look at the cockpit.
Yeah, a cockpit walk around and maybe a startup procedure.
Okay. See how the rear cockpit opens up for the gunnery position. The rear seat actually spins around and the gun goes into this gun mount and moves back and forth here. So there's interesting stories about the gunnery training because that gun on that mount can shoot right through that tail. And my friend's father was a World War II gunnery pilot trainer. And they drill into these guys in the ground school on the gunnery that do not shoot the tail, do not shoot the tail. And countless times there'd be a graze or a bullet through the tail there. So it did happen. So that's a reality of life there. But the seat spins around, you can sit backwards when you're flying. It's kind of a neat experience to do that. If you want to come up on the wing here, if I sit in there, you won't be able to see anything. So, okay, in the cockpit here, this is a very, North American designed this to be the trainer for the P-51. So a lot of the configuration of things and the stick and the rudders and all that are very similar to what is in the P-51, just half the horsepower and a little bit lower cost. But anyway, the starting procedure is it's pretty straightforward. And you got to build up your fuel pressure. There's a fuel manual wobble pump there to build up your fuel pressure. And you want to, once you get your fuel pressure going, you want to be able to give it some primer pumps. And once you get the primer going and you check the area and it's clear, and you get your mags ready to turn on, you hit the starter, and you have to pull mixture up full rich. And you hit the starter and she usually pops right off with your 3, 4, 5 primer pumps. And what you want to do when it first starts, you want to keep the engine running as low of RPM as you can. 600, 700 RPM, just chugging along. Let all the moving pieces get used to moving in lubrication before you really give it any power. It's not something you want to just razz up to any full power. You want to let it crank up, get the oil pressure built up. Then you bring in your propeller control and bring your twisted propellers back around to get higher RPM out of it. And you let it warm up. And the key to the whole warm-up procedure is you need to get 40 degrees C to do your run-up, and we like to see 50 degrees fly. And on a cold day, it can take a long time to get there. So you just never in a hurry. You let the oil temperature build up and let her warm up there. So I don't know if you want to look around in the cabin there a little bit and just kind of show what some of the gauges and instruments look like there. This is not very different from what it was in World War II. Where's the starter button? The starter button is this little, right here, this little, I flipped it up there. It's a guarded toggle switch. There are no keys in this plane. You just turn the mags on, and so that's your starter for the engage. And the mag switch, if you want to aim up to the left there, you can see the red mag switch. And the master switch is just below that. So it's all pretty straightforward. It's a great, it's a great training airplane for moving up to the single seat fighters. It does all the maneuvers that the fighters did, except a little slower. And it's a great pilot maker. That's really what it does. Once you master this thing, then you can get into the fighter planes and worry about fighter tactics and not flying the airplane. My friend is a P-51 pilot for many, many years, said the P-51 is a great trainer for the T-6. So the P-51 has wider gear, is everything. it's an easier plane to fly except for the power management than the T6. So when pilots mastered this thing, which never say you've mastered it because it's always going to come back and try and bite you. But once you've managed to tackle this thing, you can move on to a lot of other airplanes. And that's what these pilots did in World War II. From the pilots moved from this plane into the bombers, the transports, the single seat fighters, just about every kind of airplane. Almost every pilot going through had to fly these planes. So I think that's a good overview there. We've got, it's a very, Spartan cockpit. This has not been restored to any great degree. It looks like it's been well used, and we continue to well use it. So that's my tour.
Cool. I'll take that.
Okay. I want to go.
I'm gonna double check with Henning. He's running the show.
Okay. There we go. Go back in.
Henning, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you want to wrap things up then?
No, I think unless you want to do the drawing and get that on there, then we can do that. But otherwise, I think we're very good for the Zoom stuff. It came through very nice, and thanks for all your efforts.
Good. I'm glad. Great. Well, thanks everyone for.
Yeah, it was very good. I have a question though, yet for Gary.
Yeah,
if you can take one, Henning.
Sure.
Okay. Is Gary on there?
Hang on one second.
Okay.
Gary's of course doing his normal talking thing. You can't
Right. No, whenever he gets time, Henning. I just got a quick question.
Yeah. Hang on a second, Gary. There's a question for you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Gary?
Yeah.
Gary, this is Bob Kinsey.
Okay.
The question I have, Gary, is that I noticed on the Harvard, there's a longer exhaust pipe down the side of the plane than on the SNJ. Is that just on the Harvard alone, or is there a reason for that?
The reason for that is the Harvard has a heater, a real heater, and that's a heat exchange tube, so that the exhaust pipe is extended down the side, and it has a jacket on there for hot air to, cold air to circulate the hot pipe and blow into the cockpit, so that Vic Stottlemyre can fly around in his skivvies if he wants to. So, but he doesn't. But he could. You never do that in the SNJ or any AT6 because if it's cold out, you're pretty cold in there. You're putting out heat. But that's what that's all about.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
Hey, no problem. Any other questions?
No, I think we're good. Great job, Gary. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Hey, no
Great job,
problem.
Gary.
We want to have get our free ride handed out.
Do that.
Gary, let me get you a shot in front. They're all just
I think that's it. Oh, yeah. Hang on.
Yeah. All right. You're all in here? Okay, this is a very crooked raffle, no, honest raffle. And I took the one that was crunched up the most. Suni. Where's Suni?
Here.
Right there.
You know what? I had a ride just a few months ago.
Okay, so
pick another one.
Okay. Okay, here's another crunched up one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ryan Beard.
I did not have one too.
Oh. Ryan, come in.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a jet engine, so it's gonna smell different.
No afterburner. So, okay, well, thanks everyone.
Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it.
Very good, guys. Thanks so much again, and we'll catch you around the airport, and if not, we'll see you next month. So.
All right.
Thanks again. Thanks again for arranging this, Henning. It was great.
Hey, not a problem. Thanks, Bob.
You guys have a good day.
You too.
Yep. And Bob, thank you too. It was very good.
No problem.
There we go.